This training video will cover the security functions within the iSite contract management portal. To manage security, you'll navigate to the admin menu in the iSite utility bar and click on the security option in the menu. The security option will only be available to users with the manage security or security administrator permission within iSite. So displayed on the screen are the available functions within security that you can manage. Manage users allows you to add, create, edit users, reset passwords, and so forth. Also keeps track of the last viewed user that you looked at and gives you the ability to assume the identity of that user, which we'll cover in just a second. Assume user identity allows you to select a user and assume their identity without needing their password. This is useful for troubleshooting. We'll go over how to do that and what that means shortly. I can manage security groups, which allows me to create a group, assign users to that group, and then assign permissions to that group in order to be able to manage my security profile across my user base. I can manage the task membership, which allows me to assign tasks to users for visibility purposes, manage permissions on reports that are available within iSite. I can view the user sessions that are currently active for my license. I can import users into iSite from an external data source. I can add users from other licenses that I have available to me. Then I can also send welcome messages and user messages to users, including the ability to add links to help documents that might be created for my iSite instance. I can perform a bulk password reset for one or more users. And then, of course, there are some reports that are available to me relating to security. So let's talk about managing users. Managing users, simply, again, I can add users, edit users, and delete users using this user management function. From this screen, I can also perform the import user function. I can also perform a bulk password reset from here as well. You'll notice on the toolbar there's also a search function. So let's just say I have an iSite instance with many users. I can get directly to a user just by typing a name, and that'll filter my list accordingly. I can also filter my list by active or inactive users as well. So if I want to just show inactive users, I can do that. If I want to show just active users, I can do that, and I can show all of them if I want. So that's a way that I can view that information. I can also, if I'm in this view, I can filter by the beginning letter of their last name. So if I just want to show all the folks with the last name starting with W or N or B, I can go ahead and click on that filter and view my list that way. So to add a new user, I simply click on the Add New User button. Give the user a first name, last name, email address. Those would be required fields. Alternate email address would not be required. Keep in mind, if we're using iSite's built-in authentication, the email address would be what they use to log on to iSite. So that is a unique identifier for this user. So if there somehow happens to be a user with the same email address and in iSite already defined, it's going to let you know that, and it's going to ask you if you mean that person who's already defined. It's not going to let you define them twice. You can include optional phone number information as well. This will appear in the user directory. If you have any extended user properties that are created, those user properties would be displayed here. I happen to have one. I don't know why I call it contract year, but there's one created called contract year that's assigned to users, and I can create as many of those as I want. With regards to the passwords, again, if I'm using the iSite authentication mechanism, iSite will create a randomly generated password for you. At the time of creating my user, if I want to send an email to that user with those credentials, I can go ahead and do so. If not, I just set this to no. When I do that, I can also choose to include help documents as links in that email with their credentials. So I can go ahead and add one or more of those documents as references in that email. And then, of course, whether or not the user is required to change their password at next logon. Remember, they will be granted a random password, and that password will be communicated to them via email. It is highly suggested that the user change their password when they first log on, rather than keeping that randomly generated email. Other properties for the user is I can select the authentication methods that this user is allowed to use. The available methods that are listed here will be based on how your license is configured. Everybody has the access to the web authentication, but unless you have configured these other options, you would not have those available to you. But if I want to go ahead and give access to all of them, I just check all the boxes. If I am using SharePoint authentication, there is the login information that I'll need for SharePoint. You would get that from your SharePoint administrator. They would let you know what that is. That basically maps the iSite user account to the SharePoint user account in your SharePoint environment. Same thing for single sign-on. If I'm using that, there's a specific single sign-on ID that you'll need to provide for this user when you're setting them up. Security groups, while I'm creating this user, I can assign them to one or more security groups. I can assign them to all if I want, or none if I want to. That's up to me, but I can go ahead and select one or more security groups. I can also decide how this person will be able to view tasks within iSite. By default, it's going to select the view tasks associated with role option, which means this user will only be able to view tasks if they are associated with a contract role or a specific task role. If they're assigned to a specific task role, then whatever task that user is assigned to in a role, such as maybe it's task manager, then only those tasks will be available to them. If they are in a contract role, such as a program manager or contracting officer, by default, they will have access to all tasks. I can choose to give them no access to tasks, or I can choose to give them access to all tasks, or I can select specific tasks if I want to. Same thing goes for task groups. By default, they're not able to see any task groups. I can turn it on so they can see all of them, or I can select specific ones as I see fit. Lastly, timekeeping is something that will be set up once the user is created, but what it is telling you is the user can't be configured for timekeeping until they are officially assigned to a security group that has a timesheet user permission. So that's an indicator for me to go ahead and do something. So I want to go ahead and add this person, and I know time entry users is one of them. It's a security group that was set up that has that permission. So once I hit save here and create new user, that user would be able to be configured for timekeeping. I'm going to go ahead and open up a user that's already configured. So let's go ahead and take this guy up here. If I go into my timekeeping setting, or actually let's go to security groups and we'll give him time entry users. Go back into that guy. Now I can go ahead and handle the timekeeping settings for this specific user. So the settings are very self-explanatory. I can assign an approval workflow for this person when they're submitting their time. These are the default working days. For this person, I can go with the system default, or I can choose my own if I want. Same thing for requiring time entry on holidays. I can go with the system default or choose my own. Same thing for assigned hour types. Choose the default or choose my own. This is the notification profile for this user. Do we want to notify him for overdue timesheet entry, overdue timesheet signatures, and do we want to notify him as a reminder to sign his timesheet? I can also go ahead and add jobs, timekeeping jobs to this user if I want to. So I can go ahead and click the Add Jobs button. Let's do a little filter here, select my jobs, add them to the list of jobs that I want to add to this user. Looks good. Once I'm done adding jobs, I can go ahead and move on. Now by default, those jobs are going to have a default start date and end date for this user. I can go ahead and override that if I want to. If I want to give this guy a different start date, different end date, or just cancel this job from this user, I can go ahead and do that just by clicking on the job name right here. Okay, so that has to that deals with um, editing a user and adding a user. Now, once a user is defined, I can go ahead and click the reset password button for this guy. Once I do that, it'll give me a chance to email that user. Again, I can include help documents. Again, I can include or specify whether or not the user needs to change their password at next logon. Once I do that, again, depending on my settings here, an email will be sent to this user that will reset their password. Typically, there's really no reason to not send an email to the user to reset the password unless for some reason you want to change the password on somebody but still keep their user account active. It's not a normal scenario, but it has been requested in the past, which is why that option is there. I talked about the import users function. We'll talk about that in a second. We'll also talk about the bulk password reset. So that's how I can add users and edit users. To delete users, I simply just select one or more checkboxes here that I want to delete. Click the delete users button, and it'll give me a confirmation dialog to ask me if I'm sure I want to delete those users. Because once I delete them, they can no longer be resurrected. But I'm going to go ahead and cancel that out. You'll notice that some of these users have checkboxes that are disabled. Once a user has done work within the system, such as maybe they created a timesheet or whatnot, or a couple other different functions, once they've done work within the system, they can no longer be deleted. They can only be deactivated within iSite. And then again, that's just to maintain the integrity of records that were created in the system. We don't want to have orphaned data within the system where if somebody created a record, now if that user is deleted, we no longer know who created that record. So once records are created in the system, those users can no longer be deleted. Okay, back out to our menu here. We talked about assuming a user identity. What does that mean? So if I assume a user identity, what that does is it allows me to log on as that user without needing their user ID and password. So basically, I can see what their screen looks like when they log on. This is very useful for troubleshooting and very useful for configuration. I want to make sure that I'm only granting this user access to the menu options or documents or folders or libraries or whatnot that I want them to have access to. So only way I really know that I got it right, other than looking at some reports, is to use this user assume identity function. So you'll notice all these menu options that are available to me up here, signed on as administrator. Okay, so you notice this test user guy, his menu options are a lot fewer than my menu options were. So you'll notice there's no task management area, there's no admin menu for this guy. I don't have document library access. I only have access to funding. My home page is different. So I know that I have set this guy up appropriately with the permissions that only he needs. So he's not seeing a bunch of information that has no relevance to him. He's only seeing the information that makes sense to him on a day-to-day basis. So that's why you would use the assume identity function. In order to cancel out of the assume identity function, you'll hover over the user name in the utility bar and then just click log off. And that will bring you back under your own account and back to the user screen here. That is the assume user identity function. Again, keep in mind that that function is only available to users with the security administrator permission. And keep in mind as well that anytime the assume user identity function is used, an audit trail record is written in iSite so that you'll have a record whenever a user account's identity was assumed by somebody. So it'll say who assumed it, whose account was being assumed, and then the date and time that that identity assumption started and stopped. Security groups. This allows me to create one or more groups as I see fit to manage permissions and users. So I can create one or many groups. I assign permissions to those groups. I assign users to those groups. And now as a user, depending on all of the groups that I'm assigned to and the permissions that are assigned to those groups, that's what I can do inside of iSite. Okay, so you can create very broad groups, you can create very granular groups, very specific ones. It's really up to you on how you want to do that. It doesn't matter if a permission overlaps amongst different groups. So let's just say I belong to 3 different groups that have similar permissions. It doesn't matter. It's just going to take the intersection between all of those permissions across all of the groups that I am a member of. So to edit a group, I simply click on the link that'll bring me into that specific group itself. I can go ahead and edit the properties, which just allows me to change the name and description, and then the permissions that are assigned to that group. Once I'm done with that, I can go ahead and click on the edit membership, which allows me to edit the people that are assigned to this group, either one. So when I'm doing that, I can select one or more users, and those are the folks that are available or that are assigned to that specific security group. If you'll notice, when I'm in the view mode here, it's going to show me the permissions that are assigned to it, and then the folks that are assigned to this security group as well. So this group only has one permission assigned to it, and it's assigned to 17 different users within iSite. I can go ahead and delete the security group if I want. All that's really going to do is just remove the group from the user's profiles, and whatever permissions were in that group are no longer available to them unless those same permissions are available in other groups that are assigned to those users. From here, I can also delete multiple groups at a time if I want to. If I do that, it's going to prompt me to make sure that I want to delete them. So once they're deleted, You can't recover them at that point. Adding a new security group, very simple. At this point, I'm adding the name and description. I'm selecting the various permissions that are assigned to this group. Once I create that, I assign my users to it, and now the security group is active. All the permissions that are defined here are very self-explanatory. They're grouped by different function. So you see license configuration is comprised of 3 different permissions: data warehouse administrator, security administrator, settings administrator, and so forth. Each of these groups have very self-explanatory permissions, and you basically just select the different permissions that you want to assign to this group, assign the users to that group, and now any of the users that are assigned to that group can perform any of the functions that you have highlighted and selected for permissions here. Okay, task membership. This is a way that I can manage access to a task. If you remember back in the user maintenance function, I could select whether or not a user can access tasks by role, can access all tasks, or can access specific tasks. You'll notice that this task membership function will only apply to users where the specific tasks option is chosen for that user. So from here, I can go ahead and select the task and then assign the users. As you remember back in the user section, I'm actually selecting the user and then assigning tasks. So this is kind of the converse. It's the same function, it's just working at the task level rather than the user level. But all I really need to do is select the task, select the users that I want to assign access to that task, click the update authorization, and I'm done. Okay, managing report permissions. So this is something that we get a lot of questions about. So within iSite, the reports that are available have their own default permissions within iSite that basically revolve around various permissions that make sense to the type of report I'm looking at. So for instance, if I'm looking at financial related reports, it makes sense that the financial related or the user looking at these reports need to have access to permissions related around financials. So if I look at any of these reports, let's for instance look at this commitments report. By default, the user will have to have at least one of these permissions in order to view this report. Okay, if they don't have any of those permissions, then they wouldn't be able to view this report. This report would not be listed on their menu of reports when I'm in financials. So again, by default, I can go ahead and leave. I can leave these reports as is and just let iSite dictate what permissions they need. In certain circumstances, I might want to change that and say, well, no, that's not good enough. For this report, I only want people with a financials administrator to have access to it rather than these other ones. So I can go ahead and override that. Currently, as you see here, the audience is inheriting the default permissions which are listed here. Instead, I want to change that. I want to say, you know what? I only want users that are in this group to have access to this report. So regardless of their permissions that they have, the people that are assigned to this group only are the ones that can see this report. When I do that, you'll notice, let me go back to financials, you'll notice it changes the icon on that report and it shows you that it's secured by one group here. Okay, so this will tell you whether or not the audience is being inherited from the iSite default settings or if it's being secured by one or more security groups. You'll also notice this report down here has a different icon, shows that it's disabled. That means I have this report here and I've chosen to disable it. So regardless of their permissions, this report will no longer appear in any iSite menus. A couple other things to show here. You'll notice this location column. It'll show one location, two locations, etc. These are the places within iSite that these reports will be available. So if you hover over this little area here, this shows you the areas that these reports will be displayed. So in the financials costs area and the funding area is where this one report will be displayed. So it's two different locations. You'll also see that the audience is inherited. So if I hover over this, these are the permissions that a user must have, at least one of them, in order to be able to view that report. So I can do this for any of the reports that are available within iSite. I can override them all if I want, or I can just leave them all as is. It's really up to you on how you want to manage that. If there's any custom reports in your iSite instance, you'll see an additional tab called Custom Reports, and then you'll see a layer of tabs here as well that categorize those custom reports into the various functions that you see here. And you can have the same kind of situation where you can override them, you can inherit, or you can disable the report altogether. Okay, next thing up is viewing active user sessions. So this gives me the ability to view all of the folks that are currently logged on to my iSite instance for whatever reason. So let's just say it might be late on a weekend and I want to see who's currently logged onto the system. This will show me that. So this will show me the last page that this user currently looked at, when they looked at it. It also shows me some information about the browser that they're currently using, their session ID, and so forth. If I want to email that user, I can simply click on this link here and it'll open up the email program on my computer and allow me to email that user directly. But it's just for information only. I can't end any of these sessions or anything like that. It's just, again, just a quick dashboard for information purposes only. Importing users. So typically this usually only happens at the beginning of a contract. So rather than manually entering each of those users when I'm setting up a license, I may have a list of users, and maybe it's 100, 500, 1,000 users in a spreadsheet that I'd love to be able to just import. I don't want to have to hand enter all of those. Well, iSite provides an import specification for that. If I go ahead and click on this link here, it'll bring me to the import specification help file, which will tell me the fields that it needs and the type of data that it expects in those files here. It also provides me with a spreadsheet to visualize what those what those fields would look like. So typically what I would do is I would download that spreadsheet and get all that information into the spreadsheet itself. Once that information is in the spreadsheet and I'm containing all of the fields that is required, then I can save that file as a tab delimited text file and then import that file at once. If I don't want to save it as a file, I can actually cut and paste from Excel directly into this little grid here. So that saves some time as well. So if you don't want to take that extra step in saving it as a file and uploading that file, I can simply open up Excel, select my columns and rows, paste them into here, and then perform the same import function. Now when I'm importing, I have 3 different options here. I can choose whether or not to send emails to these users with their logon credentials. Typically it's a yes, sometimes it's a no, and I'll tell you why in a second. Also, do we want to make the user change their password at first logon, yes or no? As we talked about earlier, the suggestion is, or the recommended suggestion is yes on that. And then do we want to mark these users as active or not? So we talked about, well, why would I not want to email users their logon credentials? Well, let's just say we're at the beginning of the contract and we're getting everything set up. One of the tasks for setup has to do with importing users. The system might not necessarily be ready yet. I may not have given them any of their permissions. There may be modules that still need to be set up and whatnot. So while I want to get those user accounts set up, I don't want them in the system yet. So I might want to say, no, I don't want to email their credentials at this point. Let's just get the users set up. Let's get them configured before we actually notify them that they can get into the system and do work in the system itself. So that would be a great example as to why you'd want to not notify any of these users that they've been set up in iSite. Okay, let's go back to our list here. So we have this function to add users from other licenses. So if I actually happen to be a customer with multiple licenses, I can copy licenses from copy users from one license to another. So these users are already created in the system. I don't want to recreate them. I just want to assign them to this new license. So I can select the users in that license that I want to add to my new license here. I can automatically assign them to user groups right in this page here. I can also choose to send whether or not I want to send an email notification to them. And then I can even set what their authentication methods are for these folks. So it's a good way to save yourself some time and copy users from additional licenses. Again, this would really only apply to customers who have more than one iSite license that they have purchased. Okay, a couple of our notification functions. Send a bulk user message. This basically is just as it says. It allows me to send a message via email to users right within iSite here. So I can give it a subject, I can give it a message, I can choose to attach help documents if I want to, and then I'm going to select one or more security groups for users that I want to send this message to. And this is a real nice way. Let's just say I have a financials related message that I want to send out. So I can choose my financials viewer security group that I set up and I have my own users assigned to, send a message to those folks right through iSite. So I don't have to know who they are. I just know whoever's in that group is going to get this message. I click the send message button and then that email is sent out to all the users in all of the groups that I have selected here. I also have the ability to send a welcome message, very similar to what we just saw. However, the welcome message is predefined by iSite. So what this will do is it'll basically say, hey, you are being notified that you have access to the iSite portal. So again, I can select the users I want to send that email message to. I can include help documents if I want to. I click the submit button, and then that welcome message will be sent to everybody. Okay, next option I have is that bulk password reset. We covered that a little bit before. remember we said, let's just say I set up all my users, but I don't want to send emails to those folks yet. Well, now that I have everything set up, I've got all my modules configured, I've got all my users configured properly, they're in the proper security groups, they can access the proper tasks and whatnot. Now I want these folks to be able to be notified that they have access to our tool. So basically what I'm doing here is I'm going to reset all their passwords, and then they will be sent an email that shows what their new default password is, and they will be required to change their password on first logon. So again, I select one or more users that I'm going to perform this reset for. I can attach help documents. I click submit, and then an email would be sent to each user with their permissions. I'm sorry, with their default password, a link to the website, and then once they log on with that default password, they'll be required to change their password to something unique. Again, you'd only want to use this when you're using the iSite authentication protocol. If you're using something like single sign-on or SharePoint authentication, you would have no need to perform this bulk password reset because they would not be using the password mechanism that iSite provides. And the last thing has to do with reports. Again, reports are very self-explanatory. A title and description is listed here. If you want to just look at one of these, I can show you a sample report. This one doesn't have any permissions. What this is going to do is it's going to show me all of my users in the system, and it's going to show me what their permissions are based on the security groups that they're assigned to. So this user here may be assigned to many different security groups, but across all the security groups that they are assigned to, these are the permissions that are assigned to him or her. So I can look at this report and determine whether or not this person has all the functions that I want them to have. And this is a real nice way to audit yourself to make sure I have given this person everything that they need in order to do their job within iSite. Again, these reports are very self-explanatory, but it basically just shows you the security profile and security settings for your iSite management portal. And that concludes the security training for the iSite contract management portal.